The war in Lebanon is not over because Hezbollah refuses to disarm. That's the main message today, February 10th, 2025. I'm Daniel Rubenstein, and this is the live daily briefing of the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's office. I'll make a few points and take a few questions, and then it's back to work. The war in Lebanon is not over. Hezbollah refuses to disarm, and it is trying to rearm with Iranian help. Hezbollah is having a more difficult time rearming now than it did in the past. The reason it is having a more difficult time rearming is because Hezbollah's ally in Syria, Bashar al-Assad, is no longer in power. There's a new government in Syria, and it sees Hezbollah as its enemy. Another reason that Hezbollah is having a more difficult time rearming now than it did in the past is because Israel is determined to enforce the terms of the ceasefire deal from November. The Lebanese army is supposed to disarm Hezbollah and deploy in southern Lebanon in a manner sufficient to prevent Hezbollah from rearming. This has not happened yet. That's why Israel is continuing to act against Hezbollah in Lebanon. The ceasefire deal with Lebanon requires that Hezbollah disarm. Hezbollah has not disarmed. Hezbollah is violating the ceasefire deal at every moment that it remains armed. There was an underground tunnel that crossed from Syria into Lebanon. Hezbollah used this tunnel to smuggle weapons from Syria into Lebanon. The Israeli Air Force struck the tunnel so that it cannot be used to import more weapons. The Israeli Air Force also struck several Hezbollah sites containing munitions and rocket launchers that posed an imminent threat. The existence of these munitions and rocket launchers in the hands of a group other than the Lebanese government is a violation of the ceasefire deal. Hezbollah must disarm. Israel is not going to tolerate the existence of an Iranian proxy army on its border. We are not going back to an October 6th reality. Here's something that jumped out at me. Everyone is talking about the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID. I just saw that in November of 2024, USAID announced that it was providing $230 million in additional funding to support economic recovery and development programs in the West Bank and Gaza. Economic recovery and development programs in Gaza in November 2024. That was 3 months ago, while the Hamas government of Gaza was holding hostages and promising to carry out more October 7th massacres until Israel is destroyed. Gaza cannot be developed while its government says that Israel must be destroyed. Does anyone know what were the economic recovery and development programs that the Biden administration was funding in Gaza? If you know the answer, please let me know in the comments. I want to also draw your attention to a podcast episode that came out yesterday. It's a special podcast episode on the State of a Nation podcast with Eilon Levy. The reason that it's a special podcast episode is because I was the guest. It was my first time appearing on a video podcast. It's an hour-long conversation with me and Eilon Levy. We discuss all things Trump, Gaza, Palestinians, UNRWA, Qatar, South Africa, and much more. So I hope you'll go to the YouTube channel of State of a Nation podcast and check it out and let me know what you think. I'd be happy to take a little bit of time for a few questions from anyone who is watching live on our social media platforms, whether it's Instagram or YouTube or wherever else you may be watching.
Thank you, Daniel. Our first question comes from Marjorie on Instagram. Is there any chance that the ICC will go after Hamas for crimes against humanity in light of how the most recent hostages released look like they had come out of a concentration camp?
Yes, it's well known that the International Criminal Court has sought to prosecute the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for what the ICC is calling war crimes. At around the same time that the ICC issued indictments for the top two Israeli leaders during much of the October 7th war, the ICC also sought the indictment of top leaders of Hamas, two of whom are no longer alive, Ismail Haniyeh and Mohammed Deif. Also, Yahya Sinwar must have been on this list as well. So there were indictments of Hamas leaders whose names are publicly known. I have not seen much else from the ICC in terms of seeking to prosecute mid-level Hamas terrorists who have been holding hostages, who took hostages from homes in Israel. One of the challenges is that Hamas is not publishing the identities of all the people responsible for this, which makes prosecution a challenge. The problems with the International Criminal Court are well known. The court has been corrupted by false allegations against Israel, twisting facts, reason, truth, and judgment. I don't look to the International Criminal Court for much of anything. Ultimately, it's up to Israel to look out for its own security and ensure that whenever the day after arrives, that Hamas will not be the government of Gaza and there will be no Israeli hostages left in Gaza.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Jamie on Instagram. Do you think the idea to relocate Gazans is feasible, and what do you think that would look like?
It's a challenge to imagine the logistical considerations necessary for around 2 million people to move from one territory to another. But there's a lot that can be said, which is, first of all, it's entirely reasonable for other countries who claim to be supportive of the Palestinian cause, these other countries who have been accusing Israel of genocide, if these other countries are really supporters of the Palestinians and really believe that Israel is carrying out a genocide, there's a very simple thing that they can do, which is to issue long-term entry visas or passports, citizenship for Palestinians, and let people who want to leave Gaza be able to leave Gaza. This is a very simple humanitarian request that people who want to leave a war zone should be able to leave a war zone and not move to the country that they claim is attacking them, which in this case, we're talking about Israel. So President Trump has enabled a different kind of conversation about Gaza, and it has forced people to say, well, if Gaza is actually the home of the Palestinian people, great, let's make that their home. They should be living in peace with Israel and not claiming that they are refugees from 1948 with the right to return, as they say, to what's now Israel. This is one of the main motivations of the October 7th massacre. It's why it was called Al-Aqsa flood, because the people of Gaza, the Hamas government, is fighting not for Gaza, but they want to liberate Jerusalem, free Palestine from the river to the sea. This is what we need to shine the spotlight on, and we need to have every expectation that Gaza have a government in the future that is not poisoning the minds of its people and not seeking to destroy Israel. It should instead live in peace with its neighbor, and those who don't wish to, or those who wish to seek a home elsewhere, should be given the opportunity to leave.
Thank you. This is our final question from YouTube. The Trump administration established a task force to prosecute October 7th perpetrators yesterday. What are your thoughts on this, please, and what do you hope to see come from it?
First of all, this is the first time hearing about that. I missed that headline. So this sounds like a very reasonable thing, because Hamas terrorists on October 7th, 2023, attacked American citizens. The Hamas even held American hostages. So it's quite reasonable that American law enforcement agencies would seek to prosecute Hamas terrorists. I don't know how Hamas terrorists are going to be taken and brought to courts in the United States, but an indictment from US courts for crimes committed against Americans is, I think, a reasonable thing to do and a positive first step. And I hope that the state of Israel will find a way, as the war winds down at some point in the future, to also have war crimes trials for Hamas terrorists who participated in the October 7th massacre. I have much more faith in the Israeli legal system and in the American legal system than I do in the International Criminal Court, which has been highly politicized. So this is a positive step. I hope to learn more about it in the days ahead so that I can give you an even more thorough answer on this.
Thanks for watching. Drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Until next time, stay informed and inspired. This is Dejobnik signing off.